I was the quiet kid at the loud table. The one they asked to go play in the other room when the conversation got interesting. The one who noticed every tone shift, every forced laugh, every sudden silence, especially when my name was mentioned. "Don't let her hear that, she's sensitive. Be careful what you say, he's got that soft heart." They said it like a compliment. It wasn't. It was a muzzle. A polite exile. By the time I was 10, I understood there were two families in my family, the ones who knew things, and the ones who weren't allowed to. And I was always in the second category. Even my older brother, Nathan, used to tell me, "You're too emotional for this stuff. You'd take it personally." Which, funny enough, I did. But here's the thing about being left out: you notice everything. I learned to listen through walls. I recognized the pattern of lies in a glance. I could tell when someone's smile was hiding something, especially Mom's. She had this way of laughing too quickly, like she was trying to cover a bruise with glitter. My first real clue that something was wrong came when I was 12. We were at Grandma's birthday party, the big one, her 80th, and everyone was there. My Aunt Eleanor got a little drunk and kept asking my mom if she'd ever tell them what really happened. "Now's not the time," Mom hissed. I remember the way her jaw tightened. Then Eleanor pointed right at me, glassy-eyed and loud, and said, "If she ever finds out, you're the one who'll have to explain it." That sentence echoed in my head for years. What was there to find out? "They laughed it off the next day," said Aunt Eleanor had one too many Chardonnays. But I started collecting moments like that. Little clues. Half-sentences. Vibes no one else seemed to pick up on. The second clue came in high school, during a family photo project. I noticed something weird. There were barely any baby photos of me. Nathan had albums, trophies, drawings, hospital bracelets. Me? Just one framed photo on a dusty bookshelf and a couple of blurry shots with someone I didn't recognize holding me. When I asked, Mom said, "You were always camera shy, honey." But I wasn't. I loved photos. I begged for them. That was when I started to really doubt. But I never had proof. Until the day Aunt Eleanor died. It was sudden, a heart attack in her sleep. I wasn't close to her, but I always felt like she knew something. And that night, I got an email. A mass email from my cousin who was handling funeral stuff. Times, locations, food coordination. Nothing weird, except I wasn't supposed to be copied on what came next. An email thread between my mom, Nathan, and two other relatives I barely knew. They were replying to each other, but not to me. The subject line read, "Do we even tell her?" That stopped me cold. I clicked. Nathan had replied, "She was never supposed to know." We all agreed. Mom said she wouldn't ask questions. Then my mom wrote, "We can't let her read the will before we explain. If she finds out from the lawyer, it's going to blow everything open." One more reply from a name I didn't recognize, a cousin from out of state. "Honestly, I still don't understand why no one told her she's not actually." It cut off. The next message had no context. The thread broke. I sat there, reading it over and over, heart pounding. Not actually what? Who was I? What was in the will? And why were they scrambling to hide it from me? I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at the email, scrolling back and forth like maybe one more read would make it make sense. I kept whispering the line over and over. "She's not actually." Not actually what? Not actually family? Not actually my mother's child? Not actually alive? I knew better than to go directly to my mom. She would just smile, pour tea, and say something like, "You always jump to the worst conclusions, sweetheart." And then somehow make me feel like the villain for even asking. So I went through the cousin thread. There were 4 names on the email chain: Nathan, Mom, and Cheryl, and someone named Lila Bennett. I didn't remember Lila. Maybe met her once at a funeral or wedding when I was a kid. But she was the only one who hadn't replied in the chain, and she was the only one who hadn't tried to hide it. So I took a shot. I wrote, Hey, I think I got copied on something I wasn't supposed to see. And I think I deserve to know what it means. Can we talk? Please, she replied 4 minutes later. Call me. Now. No punctuation. No hesitation. I stepped outside my apartment, heart pounding, and called. She picked up instantly. You read the thread? She asked, voice tight. Yeah. A pause. They're not going to tell you. Just so you know. Tell me what? Another pause. Look, I shouldn't even be involved. I barely talk to them anymore. But I always liked you. You asked questions? They hated that. What does not actually mean? I said. Not actually what? Lila sighed. I don't know all the details. Just that there was a situation when you were born. Some kind of deal made. But Eleanor always said it was more complicated than anyone admits. What kind of deal? I think your mom didn't adopt you officially until later. Like years later. I remember overhearing something about papers being forged so no one would find out. The world tilted under me. I'm adopted? I whispered. Not legally. Not at first. Look, I don't know everything, okay? But Aunt Eleanor knew. She said one day it would blow up. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because you were the only one who would feel it. They thought you'd make noise. That you wouldn't know how to keep it quiet. I sat on the curb in front of my apartment, staring at the cracks in the concrete like they held some kind of code. And the will? I haven't seen it. But if Eleanor left you something, and she might have, your mom is going to bury it. What do I do? Lila hesitated. Find her lawyer. She had one of her own. Eleanor didn't trust anyone in this family. She kept everything separate. My mind raced. Do you know his name? Last name's Marcus. Samuel Marcus. Office is in Brentwood, above that diner with the red awning. I ended the call and stared out into the night. My mother didn't tell me. My brother didn't tell me. No one thought I could handle the truth, just like always. But they were wrong. I wasn't the fragile kid anymore. I wasn't going to let them control the story. Not now. Not when I was finally close to the truth. The Marcus Law Office didn't have a receptionist. It didn't have background music or air conditioning either. Just a quiet, humbling stillness, like truth settled in the corners of the room and refused to move. I gave my name, showed my ID, and was ushered into an office that looked like it hadn't been redecorated since 1983. Dusty law books lined the shelves. A rust-colored chair sat across from a desk covered in neatly stacked folders. Mr. Marcus himself looked like he'd been carved out of oak and stubbornness. He waved me in. You're the niece, he said, like he already knew everything. Yes. I think Aunt Eleanor left something for me. She did. He reached into a drawer and placed a thick envelope on the desk. She left instructions. If you ever showed up here asking questions, I was to give you this. Only you. Not your brother. Not your mother. He slid it across the desk, eyes never leaving mine. She said, if she comes here, she's ready. I swallowed hard and opened it. Inside, a handwritten letter. Behind it, a copy of Aunt Eleanor's will. My name was on both. The letter was short, but every word was a blade. If you're reading this, it means they kept the lie. I hope they wouldn't, but I know how this family operates. You always asked the right questions, they just didn't like the answers. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you myself. But I've left you something. Something they thought was gone. Look for the name Rebecca Quinn. That's where your truth starts. Rebecca Quinn? My hands shook. I flipped through the copy of the will. Page 3. There it was. To my niece, my full name, I leave the contents of the safety deposit box at Greenhill Bank, registered under the legal name, Rebecca Quinn. Legal name. My pulse stopped. I had never heard that name in my life. But if Eleanor was using the word, legal, that meant something huge. Something permanent. Something papered and signed and buried. Mr. Marcus leaned forward. She set up that box almost 20 years ago. Paid the storage fees in advance for decades. She told me no one else was to access it. Not even your mother. Who is Rebecca Quinn? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Marcus folded his hands. If I had to guess, someone your mother worked hard to erase. The words felt like acid in my mouth. And the box? Greenhill Bank. Downtown. Ask for Manager Patel, he'll know. But be careful. The moment your mother finds out you've read this. He tapped the envelope. She'll come running. I nodded numbly, stood up to leave, but hesitated. Why would Eleanor go through all this? Why keep it secret? He looked me dead in the eye. Because someone took something from you before you were old enough to understand. Eleanor couldn't stop it. But she could make sure it didn't stay buried. I walked out of that office with the envelope clutched to my chest, like it might disappear if I blinked. I didn't notice the missed calls until I was halfway home. Mom, 3 missed calls. Nathan, 1 voicemail. Then a text from my mother. Did you go to Eleanor's lawyer? And then from Nathan. Call me. Now. You're making this worse. I didn't reply. Let them panic. Let them feel what it's like to have someone else pull the strings. I had spent my entire life on the outside of every locked door in this family. Now I held the keys. And I was about to open the one door they never wanted me to find. Greenhill Bank didn't look like a place that held secrets. It was clean. Bright. The kind of place with a popcorn machine in the lobby and a pen on every chain. But when I walked in and asked for Manager Patel, the teller gave me a look like I'd just asked for the basement key in a horror movie. Patel came out a few minutes later. Thin, polite, glasses too big for his face. He led me down a hallway, then behind a steel door that hissed open with a fingerprint scanner and a key. He handed me a small, velvet-lined box and said, "Take your time. I'll be right outside." I sat in the vault alone. The box wasn't locked, just sealed with Eleanor's neat handwriting on a strip of tape. For my full name, no one else. Inside were 2 envelopes and a flash drive. I opened the thicker envelope first. Inside, a birth certificate. I froze. Name, Rebecca Quinn. Date of birth, my birth date. Place, St. Catherine's Hospital, Dover, Maine. Mother, Cassandra Quinn. Father blank. I stared at it, heart hammering. The name. The date. The city I had never been told I was born in. My mother wasn't who she said she was. I tore into the second envelope. Inside, court documents. Temporary guardianship forms. A letter from a child services caseworker, dated when I was 4 years old. They read like a script from someone else's life, except it was mine. Cassandra Quinn was my biological mother. She had a breakdown. Was deemed unfit at the time. My aunt, my now mother, stepped in to take care of things temporarily. Except, the adoption was never finalized. Not legally. Not cleanly. Instead, everything was slowly, quietly erased. My name changed. My record sealed. And no one ever told me. I sat there in the silence of the vault, surrounded by decades of omission. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt stolen. The door opened behind me. "Don't touch anything else," my mother said. She was standing there, breath short, hands clenched. I don't know how she found me so fast, but somehow, she always knew when control was slipping. "You weren't supposed to see that," she said. Her voice wasn't soft anymore. It was tight. Angry. "You mean the truth? It was complicated. We were trying to protect you." "Protect me from what? Who I am?" She took a step forward. "Your mother, Cassandra, she was unstable. She left you alone. I saved you." "No," I said, holding the papers to my chest. "You hid me. That's not the same thing." She flinched like I'd hit her. "I gave you everything," she said, voice cracking. "A house. A school. A family. And you never told me it was borrowed." We stared at each other. For once, the silence wasn't mine. She finally spoke. If you go public with this, you'll destroy the whole family. I nodded slowly. Then maybe it deserves to be destroyed. I couldn't stop staring at her name. Cassandra Quinn. It sounded too elegant to be tragic. Too soft to be the name of a woman I'd been told never existed. After I left the bank, I laid everything out on my kitchen table. The birth certificate. The court documents. The sealed CPS records with redacted names and blurred timelines. My life, laid out in 8.5 by 11. And not a single word of it matched the version my mother had fed me for decades. Eleanor hadn't just left me the truth. She'd left me proof. And it burned. For 3 days I chased Cassandra through digital breadcrumbs. A few old mentions in archived court listings. A reference to postpartum psychosis from the 90s. A care home payment listing under a state mental health program. And then finally, Dover Pines Assisted Living. 57 years old. Resident since 2011. I stared at the listing for a long time. If she was there, it meant she'd survived. But what kind of life had she been allowed to live? I called. A nurse answered. When I told her my name, she went quiet. I think I'm her daughter. Her tone shifted. Would you like to come see her? Yes. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not Nathan. Not my mother. I didn't want them to try and stop me, or worse, explain it away. The drive took 3 hours. The road blurred into a haze of trees and signs I didn't read. My hands were sweating the whole way. The facility was clean, quiet. A little too quiet. They checked my ID, buzzed me in. She's waiting in the garden room, the nurse said. I turned the corner, heart thudding. And there she was. A woman with silver-streaked hair, sitting by a window that overlooked a dying patch of roses. She looked older than 57. But her eyes, pale green, watery but sharp, were mine. She turned toward me like she'd heard me breathing from across the room. I was wondering when you'd come, she said. I froze. You know who I am? She nodded slowly. Of course. I never forgot you. They just made me say I did. I sat down in the chair across from her. You're my mother. She let out a sound, half laugh, half sigh, like a pain she'd carried for decades just loosened. They told me I'd never see you again. Said you were better off without me. That you were too young to remember. But I remembered. Every day. I looked down. They said you abandoned me. That you were unstable. Her eyes welled up. I was sick. I won't lie. I had a breakdown after the birth. I wasn't ready. I didn't have support. They said they'd take care of you for a while. Said I could recover. But when I got better, the door was already shut. Did you try to find me? She reached into a drawer beside her and pulled out a box. Worn edges. Faded tape. Inside, envelopes. Dozens of them. Each one was addressed to me, but never sent. Wrong names. Wrong cities. Returned to sender. Unopened. I wrote every year. On your birthday. On Christmas. On Mother's Day. I tried. I begged for updates. But they said you didn't want to know me. I blinked hard, trying not to cry. They lied to both of us. I said. She nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. And I let them. I gave up. Because I thought, if you were happy, maybe it was worth it. I couldn't speak. We sat in silence. A silence full of everything I was never told. Every photo I never saw. Every hug I never got. Finally I asked, can I visit again? She smiled, soft and cracked at the edges. I'd like that. When I walked out of the building, the sunlight hit different. Sharper. Warmer. Real. I wasn't lost anymore. But I wasn't finished either. My mother had stolen my name, my past, and my family history. And now? Now I was going to take it back. For 3 days I lived between two versions of my life. The one I knew, full of birthday parties I never remembered, photos I never saw, names that didn't belong to me. And the one Cassandra gave me, handwritten letters, stories, a lullaby she swore I used to hum in my sleep. She had a photo of me in her wallet. Worn. Folded. Carried like a wound that never healed. She hadn't forgotten me. They had just made sure I forgot her. On the fourth day, I told Nathan. He arrived angry, like he was expecting a fight. You went behind Mom's back? I found Cassandra, I said. She's alive. His face drained of color. She what? But Mom said, she said Cassandra disappeared. No. She was hospitalized. Postpartum psychosis. She got better. But Mom made sure no one knew. And then she changed everything, my name, my records, my life. Nathan sat down, hard. She said you were too young. That she saved you. I nodded. That's the story she chose. Not the truth. He didn't speak after that. Just stared at the floor like it could give him answers. That's when the text started. Aunt Marie, whatever you're digging up, don't bring it to the gathering. Uncle Ray, heard you've been investigating things. Your mom's a wreck. Cousin Jenna, is it true? Cassandra is alive? I hadn't even said anything yet, and still somehow I was already the problem. But they didn't get to control the narrative anymore. So I made a choice. I printed everything. The will. The birth certificate. Court records. Sealed guardianship papers. Child services filings. Cassandra's letters. Then I sent a simple message to the family thread. Yes, I'll be at the gathering. I have something I need to share. No emojis. No tone. Just fact. The gathering was at my Uncle Rob's house. Plastic chairs. Folding tables. People holding paper plates with ribs and deviled eggs, laughing in that loud, shallow way families do when secrets are suffocating the air. I arrived with a manila folder and silence. People looked at me like I had brought a storm in my pocket. Mom spotted me and came fast. I thought you weren't coming, she said, voice tighter than her smile. I changed my mind. She stepped closer. Don't do this here. You mean don't undo what you did? Her eyes flared. This isn't the time. Don't humiliate me. I held up the folder. I'm not here to humiliate you. I'm here to tell the truth. You don't know what you're doing. I do. For the first time in my life, I actually do. She reached for the folder. I pulled it back. You always said I was too sensitive. That I couldn't handle the truth. But what you really meant was, you couldn't handle me knowing it. She looked stunned, like the script had been rewritten mid-scene. I stepped past her and climbed 2 steps onto the patio. The yard fell into a hush. The kind that settles when something real is about to happen. I know this isn't how these things usually go, I said, voice steady. But before the drinks get poured and the gossip starts, I want to tell you something. Something most of you were never meant to hear. I opened the folder. And for the first time in 26 years, I was no longer silent. The first thing I pulled out of the folder was the birth certificate. Some of you know parts of this story, I said. Most of you were told to forget it. Or never heard it at all. The paper shook slightly in my hand, but my voice didn't. This is my birth certificate. It doesn't say mother's name under mother. It says Cassandra Quinn? Gasps. Chairs creaked. Someone coughed. Uncle Ray whispered something to Anne Marie, who was already shaking her head. I held up the guardianship form next. This is the court order from when I was 4. Cassandra had a breakdown. She was hospitalized. And the woman I've called my mother for 26 years took temporary custody. That custody was never legally finalized. I flipped pages. This is a letter from the social worker. This is the letter Eleanor left me in her will. This is a photo of the box that sat in her bank account for 20 years, because she knew one day I would need to see it. My mother stood now. Stop this, she said. I turned to her. You had 26 years to tell the truth. I get 10 minutes. Her mouth opened. Then closed. This, I said, lifting Cassandra's unopened letters, is a box of mail she sent me every year. They were returned. Not because she forgot me. Because you hid me. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. You told everyone I was too sensitive. That I couldn't handle hard truths. But what you really meant was, you didn't want me to know I wasn't yours to begin with. Nathan stepped forward then, awkward and pale. I didn't know, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I mean, I thought she was dead. She's not, I said. She's living in Dover. She remembers everything. My mother pointed at me. You don't know the full story. She was dangerous. Unstable. I did what I had to do. You didn't just protect me, I said. You claimed me. She's lying, my mother snapped to the crowd. You've all seen how dramatic she can be. Eleanor twisted her. Cassandra's sick. A hand went up in the back of the yard. Jenna. Wait, did you say Cassandra's alive? I nodded. She never stopped looking for me. Mom's face turned cold. This is emotional manipulation. You don't get it. You weren't there. Neither were you, I said. You were just first to fill in the silence. Then came the moment no one could have scripted. A car door slammed on the driveway. A nurse stepped onto the lawn, slow and careful. And beside her, Cassandra. Older. Thinner. But standing. Gasps again. The room froze. My mother's hand went to her chest like someone had stabbed her in reverse, taking something out instead of putting something in. Cassandra didn't speak right away. She just walked until she was close enough to be seen, but far enough to not collapse. And then she looked at me. I told you I'd be there if you needed me, she said. She turned to the crowd. I didn't abandon her. I was sick. But I got better. And by the time I came back, she was gone. Because someone took her and never let go. Everyone stared. Silent. No one moved. Not even my mother. And in that moment, surrounded by people who once looked through me, I didn't feel weak. I felt true. The yard cleared slowly, like fog lifting from a bad dream. The cousins left first, whispering to their parents, wide-eyed and unsure of what they'd just witnessed. The uncles stayed long enough to pretend they weren't choosing sides, and the aunts gave me half-smiles that said, I always knew something wasn't right, even though none of them had ever asked. And my mother? She stood on the patio the whole time, unmoving. Watching. Like if she didn't speak, the world might stay how she left it. But the world had already changed. Cassandra sat beside me on a wooden bench under a crooked umbrella. She looked tired but steady. Real. Not the ghost I'd imagined all these years, a blurry figure I thought I'd conjured from grief or gaps in memory. She was here. And I wasn't asking questions anymore. I was just being. She turned to me. I never imagined I'd be sitting in this backyard again. I looked around. You ever notice how everyone in this family talks around the truth like it's a hole in the ground? She smiled. And they hope if they don't step in it, it isn't real. We sat for a while in silence. It wasn't awkward, it was earned. She reached into her purse and pulled out a photo. It was us, her, holding me in front of a hospital fountain. She looked terrified and proud all at once. I kept this, she said. Even when they said you were gone. Even when I wasn't allowed to write. My chest ached. I don't know how to make up for lost time, I whispered. You don't have to, she said. We start where we are. She left with the nurse an hour later. And for once, when I watched someone leave, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt anchored. That's when my mother finally came over. Her heels tapped lightly on the wood. Her eyes were red, her arms crossed. I wasn't trying to hurt you, she said quietly. You were so small. And I was scared. She was unstable, and I didn't know what else to do. You didn't have to lie for 26 years. I said. You think it was easy? Raising you? Watching you look for someone else and knowing I'd never be enough? I stood up slowly. You weren't supposed to be enough. You were supposed to be honest. She blinked. I loved you, she said. I still do. I know, I said. But love isn't ownership. She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, Do you hate me? I shook my head. No. I just don't need you to finish this story for me anymore. Her tears fell, finally. But I didn't comfort her. She turned and left, not slammed, not screamed, just faded out of the moment like she always did when the truth got loud. That night, I filled out the name change application. Not to Quinn. Not to the one they gave me either. Something new. Something mine. And on the line that asked for a reason, I didn't write anything fancy. Just 5 words. To reclaim what was stolen. They said I was too sensitive to know the truth. But I wasn't. I just had to live long enough to tell it myself.